Welcome back to Tanya in 5. The last few days we have been studying chapter 7. Chapter 7 is a long chapter, so we're going to divide it into two. Today, I'll be looking at the first half of chapter 7. Till now we discussed that there are two divine energies that work in consort to bring about creation. The creative power, expressed in the name of Havaya, and the restraining power, the power to conceal and withhold, expressed in the name of Elohim. Now the truth is, these two powers are divine powers and are thus, number one, completely one with God Himself and are therefore infinite. There's one last very crucial stage in the creative process, and that is the allowance for otherness. The purpose for creation is that we have a relationship with God. And relationships are when there are two distinct entities. So there's a power, a divine energy, known as Malchut, or sovereignty, that allows for and creates the notion of otherness, something other than God Himself. It's called sovereignty because that's how kings are. A king can only be a king on other people. Even his own children, he cannot be king over them. He is father to them. King is specifically when there is others. And therefore the divine sovereignty, the divine kingship, or in Hebrew Malchut, expressed in the name of Adonai, that is the divine power to create and allow for otherness. Now, this Malchut, this capacity to create otherness, is also a divine power. And if it's a divine power, then it too is one with God. Now, if it is one with God, then in reality, the otherness that it creates is subsumed and totally nullified within the infinite power of God. This is the higher unity. The higher unity is to be understood as follows. There is one reality, God Himself. And everything that exists, even the very notion of otherness, the very notion that we have a sense of independence, is all within Him and therefore absolutely nullified to Him. Because even the fact that we have a sense of self and there is an otherness between us and God, that too is a divine power and is therefore completely surrendered and nullified within Him. That is one level of divine unity, the higher unity. God is the only reality, and everything is nullified within Him. Then there is another level of divine unity. You see, the divine power of Malchut to create otherness invests itself within the realm of time and space to give each creation its sense of independence. I take up a certain amount of time and space, as do you, and as does everything else that exists. And that's what gives us our distinct individual identity. Now, if this creative power, the Malchut, that gives us otherness within time and space is invested within us, then the infinite one, God Himself, is also within us. The infinite one is also within time and space and every single minute detail of existence. Physical, spiritual, conceptual, emotional, every part of existence is infused with the infinite because it is the infinite power of Malchut that is invested within us to create us and to give us our identity. So here we have the lower unity. The lower unity is that the world exists. It certainly does. But within this world is the infinite truth of God Himself. The higher unity is expressed in the verse, Shema Yisrael, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad. Hear, O Israel, God is our Lord, God is one. We just describe God as a one singular entity. Everything that exists is just nullified within Him. That's the higher unity. The next verse we read is, Baruch Shem Kavod Malchuto L'Olam Va'ed. Blessed be the name of His kingdom forever and ever. So here we talk about divine kingdom. There is a world, but God is sovereign over our world. God is invested within our world. This is the lower unity. Now with this we can understand that when God knows everything, It's not as if that knowledge increases with time and somehow increases to his existence. Because his knowledge of our reality is not as if he's standing somewhere far away, God forbid, and observing our world and thus knowing what's going on. His knowledge of our reality is because he is within our reality. And therefore, by knowing himself, he knows reality. Right? You see, when I know things, the information exists apart and distinct from me, and then I go and discover that piece of information. So as soon as I know that information, it has increased me, increased my knowledge, increased my experience. And that's because me and the knowledge are two distinct entities. But for God, where he himself is embedded within all of creation, therefore his knowledge of creation is simply by dint of the fact that he knows himself, and therefore is in no way an addition to him. And thus we can understand, even as God creates all of reality, he does not change in the slightest. Because, number one, the higher level of unity, everything is nothing within him, but even more importantly, he is within all of creation in every single detail, in every single conceptual, literal, physical, spiritual space that exists. He is within it. And therefore, no change whatsoever to him. The takeaway from all of this is, in our lives, we have these two unities. We have the part of our lives, the times when we feel like the world doesn't exist. We live in a world of just the divine. On Shabbat, during prayer, holidays, we have these moments when we feel completely detached from our world and we are just surrendered within the truth of the divine. But then there is another unity in which our world exists. We have tons of details and so many different parts to our lives. And we have to remember and reveal that even within there, even within the minutiae of our lives, there too is God. Looking forward to seeing you when we conclude part 2 of chapter 7.